Sabres are playing better. They did not get a win over the weekend, but a performance to feel good about. Plus a preview of the Yotes game coming up here in the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Be sure to check us out on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe us, and also on our text line, our Locked On Sabres text line. Jump into our Sorties group chat. Join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres. We, coming from that chat, I threw in the comment on Saturday after the Sabres and Habs game from Kyle Okposo. Hurts to not get the win, but I think we can agree the last two games look a little different than the previous 25. And I do kind of want to agree with him on one front, or most fronts, but not all. And I'll explain in a bit as we kind of recap what we saw on Saturday against Montreal, and then a little short preview of Sabres versus Coyotes coming in the third segment of today's show. So a lot to get to at Sneaky Joe Sports if you want to follow me on Twitter. So the Sabres fall 3-2 in a shootout to Montreal, in a shootout where everyone, I think, felt pretty good about how they played at 5-on-5. And the power play continues to be the number one issue that fans have, I have, I'm sure the coaching staff has. Everybody has a problem right now with their power play, but it's time to look at the coaching staff and look at the players to try to figure out how the hell is this power play losing them hockey games, because that is exactly what happened on Saturday night against the Montreal Canadiens. The Sabres outshot Montreal in this game 48-31. They had 48 shots on goal. Montreal wins the game 3-2. They went 1-for-4 on the power play. The Sabres went 0-for-5, including a decent stretch of a 5-on-3, including a stretch of a 4-on-3 in OT. The Sabres had so many opportunities to close this game out, and they did so on the power play, but Montreal scored and the Sabres didn't. It's been a theme all year that the Sabres are not good on the power play, and I don't see any end in sight. I don't see signs of improvement. I don't see them trying things. By the way, if you're wondering, they are 26th in the NHL at 14.29%. My problem with the power play continues to be that nobody is moving. Everything is stagnant. Guys get to their spots and they sit right there and they don't move. And I don't know what it's going to take for them to change that. Is it going to take a different coach? I don't even mean Don Granato. I mean a different coach in charge of the power play to do that. A different assistant coach. Do they have to make a change there? Doesn't have to be firing somebody. How about giving the responsibility to somebody else? Or just have the guy in charge, get them to start crossing, get some flow going, some dynamic movement around. That'll get guys like Tage Thompson open. You know, Washington for years with Alex Ovechkin, it's easy to defend their power play, right? Because, they're just going to pass to Ovechkin for one-timers. Well, everybody else around Ovechkin is moving, which makes you have to pay attention to all that, and therefore that opens up Ovechkin very often. The Sabres should be doing that same type of thing with Tage Thompson, but they're not doing it. Otherwise, we all liked their game, right? We all liked their game against Montreal. They were playing it. I said it to a buddy while we were watching. They're playing playoff-style hockey right now. They were fast. They were, going all out. They were throwing hits. Man, were they throwing hits. I don't know if I've seen that amount of hits in a game. I'm sure statistically you could find one. They had 17 hits in the game. I don't know. It felt like every time the Sabres were had an opportunity to take a run at a guy, they were doing that. Poso had a couple of big hits, maybe trying to fire the guys up. Dahlin had a big hit at center ice. several others. Eric Johnson, Connor Clifton, those guys are always typically going to do that. But guys you wouldn't expect it for. Peterka threw a big hit in this game where I was stunned. Like, I've never seen him do that. So I thought they were playing intense hockey against Montreal. They lost the game, though, because they don't score on the power play, and Eric Robinson took a pretty dumb penalty, right? Whether or not you want to say that it should have been 5 minutes or whether it should have been 2 minutes, Robinson took a dumb penalty. He didn't slow up. The defenseman had his numbers pointed at Robinson the whole way. And Robinson just decided, I'm going to run through this guy. And all day, every day, that's going to be a penalty. So the guy, he's probably trying to play, all balls to the wall, right? Like trying to impress his teammates because he's a new guy and he wants to show off what he could do a little bit, give energy to the team. But you just got to be smart. And when a guy's got his back to you for as long as that defenseman did, you can't run through him because that's exactly what's going to happen. 5-minute penalty. And that's the game, right? Like that is a big goal by Montreal. They scored 2 kinda while he was in the box. The first one was at a 4-on-4 though. So they score pretty quickly after that. And it ate up 5 minutes on the clock where the Sabres were not able to dominate the hockey game like they had been doing for the other 55 minutes. So bad penalty by Eric Robinson. But again, the biggest issue here on hand is that the Sabres didn't score. Now, what I would do, I already mentioned what I would do stylistically for the Sabres on the power play, but I think some major, major personnel changes need to happen on that unit as well. Starting with, they got to get Jeff Skinner off that power play. He's just not equipped to it. It's never been his thing going back to even his time in Carolina. He's always been a much better 5-on-5 scorer than he is a 5-on-4 player. So I would move Skinner off that top unit. I would move, honestly, Casey Middlestat off that top unit as well. Middlestat has had a couple of opportunities not on the power play where he's whiffed on it, and he's playing on the right wall for a one-timer, and Middlestat is not a guy that is a threat with one-timers at all. Or with his shot really in general. He's more of a passer. To me, the move I would make is move Skinner and Middlestat off, and I would try Peterka and Benson. I would try Peterka on the right wall, get him on his one-timer. I think he might have... Who's got a better one-timer in this team right now than J.J. Peterka? Is Tage Thompson the only answer? Peterka might be second. He's got to be on the top power play unit because unlike Olofsson, because I've said this about Olofsson before, right? I like to have 2 guys on their one-timers on either side. And Olofsson presents that. But Olofsson is not carrying the puck as well as Peterka is in general. Olofsson's actually been playing really well lately, so I don't want to be criticizing him right now. I think he's been great. But in general, he's not a guy that likes to carry the puck, have it on his stick very often. He's not someone that makes great cross-ice passes. Peterka, to me, is just a more well-rounded offensive player. And you know what? If you want him to be the zone entry guy, he could be that. If you want him to be the one-timer guy, he could be that. If you want him to be the guy that's making a cross-ice pass, he could be that. I think Peterka has earned the right to be on that number 1 power play unit. So I would put him there. And honestly, I'd put Zach Benson there. Benson is the one guy that moves around on the power play, even if it's only in his little pocket of space. He's trying to mix it up a little bit. He's trying to move guys open. He is one of the smartest guys on the team in terms of hockey IQ. And I think his brain is something I want on the first unit. And I want Peterka's shot and speed. So if you're asking me what they need to do for the power play, start moving guys around, maybe change who the assistant coach is in charge of it. Move Middlestat and Skinner off of it, put them on the second unit, and get Benson and Peterka up there on the first unit. Those would be the moves that I would do, and I think it cost them against Montreal to not have a better combination. Timeout here when we come back. One other thing I got to get to from Sabres falling to Montreal. See, like in my mind, they beat them because they played so well. Devon Levi. We got to talk about Devon Levi when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts, for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, Sabres and Coyotes, 7 o'clock Monday night. The Sabres are coming off a shootout loss to Montreal, where, kind of interesting. Owen Power goes in the shootout. One of the most unenthusiastic looking shootout attempts I've ever seen, but hey, it worked. He's 2 for 2. Probably put him back out there the next time they have a shootout. Victor Olofsson scored on his attempt. Thompson did not. Peterka did not. And Levi, to my surprise, had a really rough shootout. Only stopped 1 of 4. And that's not something I feel like I would anticipate long term. I think he's usually going to be a good shootout guy because he's so good side to side. Short area quickness is really what you want, and he's got that. So I'm not worried about him for the shootout. And also, the shootout is so rare these days that I'm just not worried about it really in the first place. How many shootouts are they going to have? In fact, this would be something easy to look up here. How many shootouts are the Sabres going to have this year? And to figure that out, we can just look at really what they had last year. Last year in the shootout, the Sabres had, 6. Okay. That is surprising to me. I did not think that number was going to be that high. The year before, they had 6 also. Okay. So by that logic, the Sabres have 5 more shootouts to come, which actually might be a lot. But so far, they're not on pace to hit that 6. They're on pace more for like 3 or 4. So anyways, 1 shootout, 0 for 1 so far. But other than the shootout, Levi was unbelievable. Now, Caden Primo ended up being the game's number 1 star for good reason. He stopped 46 shots out of 48. So an incredible statistical performance from him. Levi, though, was very strong in his own right. The expected goals for, he allowed 2 goals below expected in this game. Stopped a breakaway, the sprawling cross ice 2-on-1 save that he made. He got a little bit of help from the shooter that he was putting it a little bit more towards the middle, but Levi got over to make that save. There was another one that I was with a group of friends watching that game where we all thought he made a second robbery, and then we realized that the guy hit the outside of the net. But nonetheless, he was sharp. He was tracking pucks well. He was not allowing a lot of rebounds. The 2 goals that go in, one he got beat kind of clean, and Eric Johnson actually screens him. And then the other one's a deflection. So maybe, he could have stopped one of the 2. But 29 saves out of 31 shots, and I thought he had a bunch of high danger saves in this game. So Levi, the side-to-side movement is so impressive. His athletic ability is so impressive. And now, after 2 starts in a row for him, and I'll give it away here before Sabres and Coyotes preview, he's going to start again on Monday against Arizona. He continues to cement himself as one of their top 2 goaltenders over Eric Comrie. And maybe he'll start to push Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen again. Luukkonen's been out sick. Maybe he'll start to push him again. But Levi has absolutely earned the right to stay here in Buffalo. And sending him back to Rochester, to me, would be ludicrous at this point. Had a couple of rocky games earlier in the year, and Comrie seemed to be playing a little okay. So, all right, let's send him down, get a couple of starts, call him back up if you need to. Now, you called him back up. He's played great. Comrie's been terrible. I don't know how you do anything different. Maybe Comrie's going to stick around here as the 3rd goalie and not start games. To me, he shouldn't play anytime coming up. It should be Levi and Luukkonen in a 2-man rotation as long as these 2 guys are going to be playing like this. So, Levi has been unbelievable. And if you look at the expected goals for, or goal saved above expected for the season, he's starting to rise a little bit. He's now out of 68 goaltenders in goals above expected. He is 33rd. So he's in the positive, 33rd. So that would be a low end number 1 type of production. He's actually in that category above Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Luukkonen is 37th out of 68. So 33rd and 37th for Luukkonen and Levi. To nobody's surprise, where does Eric Comrie rank out of 68? 67th. Only Jack Campbell, who has been waived and sent to Rochester, is below him. So, yeah, about time to get rid of them. Those are the advanced numbers. If you want the save percentage on the season, Luukkonen is still the leader in that department, a 907 for UPL versus an 892 for Levi versus an 863 for Eric Comrie. When we come back, other than Levi starting Monday against the Coyotes, we'll have the rest of the lineup news for you, and we'll preview this game. I got my parlay of the night coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. We are presented by Sleeper. I'm going to be set. I was looking at my Sleeper app today. I'm sad. Like, my fantasy leagues are starting to dry up. I got a couple teams that are going to miss the playoffs. I've only got 2 leagues left on Sleeper that are active, and I'm like, I'm not going to be visiting the app as much. They got the Santa hat on the mascot, and I'm like, wait a minute. Yes, I can. I'll be on the app all the time. Daily Fantasy Hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of Locked On NHL. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey. Because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. How about JJ Peterka over a certain amount of shots on goal in this game? You might want to look at him, and hitting on that one a little bit as of late. All you have to do, pick whether players like it doesn't have to be a Sabre. McDavid, Ovechkin will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, shots, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. And to win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. And then you can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL. You're going to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Final segment, wrapping things up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Let's do a quick preview of Sabres and Coyotes, and we will start by looking at the lineup for tonight's game. I already mentioned Devon Levi will be between the pipes. How about the rest of it? The Sabres have recalled forward Brett Murray, who will enter the lineup in place of Isaac Rozan, who has been sent back down to Rochester, which is kind of curious because I thought he's been playing a little bit better in the last week or two that he's been up. Murray, though, big body, 6'5", defensive player, physical player, goes down on that line with Tyson Jost and Victor Olofsson. Potentially, gives the Sabres a better possibility for some penalty kill opportunities. If Eric Robinson is going to be taking himself out of games, they need another penalty killer. So Murray enters. All right, let's see. Byro got a shot. Rozan got a shot. I still don't really feel like Kulik got a shot. He only played 10 minutes of ice time. He at least got that, though. Same thing with Matt Savoy, right? He only got 3 minutes, but they have been calling guys up, kind of rotating through that. Murray's turn, I guess. Otherwise, pretty much the same thing. Skinner with Middlestat and Thompson, Cousins with Benson and Peterka, Krebs centering Oposo, Robinson, Joe centering Olofsson and Murray. On the blue line, this is where we have some questions going into this game. They're going to stick with Matthias Samuelsson and Owen Power if Samuelsson plays. Samuelsson was sore. He left practice early on Monday morning. He blocked 9 shots on Saturday against Montreal. So nobody would blame him for being sore. So we'll see if he's ready to go by tonight. But he'll be playing with Power if he does. I'd imagine if he is scratched, that Ryan Johnson will just be put right into that position. Rasmus Dahlin playing with Henry Jokiharju. I've liked those two a lot. I want to, in one of my upcoming shows, I want to spend more time on Jokiharju, breaking down some of the numbers, because he's a hard player to evaluate, because you can't just look at goals and assists. So I want to look at some advanced numbers and kind of break down where Jokiharju's at. I'm going to ask Don Granato about him on Tuesday, because I think he's been very strong, but he's a player you don't often notice. But he's been playing with Dahlin as of late. I thought he's been doing a very good job on the top pair. Connor Clifton, Eric Johnson. It looks like Ryan Johnson will be scratched if Samuelsson plays, and I think that stinks because I think he's definitely one of their best 6. And not that it matters that much, but we don't really know who the backup is between Eric Comrie and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Luukkonen's been back skating, but has been sick too, so we'll see. Again, not like it really matters because Levi will be the starter. The odds in this game. All right, my parlay of the day, but starting before that, let's look at the odds for Sabres and Coyotes. By the way, I should mention before I look at the odds, give you a quick look at what's going on in Arizona. The Coyotes are a riser. They are in a playoff spot this year. In that 5,000-seat arena and no money paid, they are 13-11-2, 28 points on the season. That is 4th in the Central Division, so by a hair, but they're in a spot. at the moment. Clayton Keller, their leading point getter, 25 points in 26 games. Nick Schmaltz, 20 and 26. Michael Sarcone has been their leading goal scorer kind of out of nowhere. He's at a 34% shoot percentage, so he's not going to be doing that long term. 27 years old. He's got 13 goals and 3 assists in 25 games. Kind of a wild stat line. And for a guy that, by the way, had only played 30 games in the NHL and only had 4 or 6 goals before this crazy 13-game stretch for him. So keep an eye on him playing on the second line tonight for Arizona. Logan Cooley, by the way, another great young player, 14 points this year, 19 years old. He's going to be really good one day. Already is pretty good. All right, now time for my parlay. And looking at the odds, the Sabres are favored in this game despite the Coyotes having more points on the year. Sabres minus 128 on the money line. Coyotes plus 106 on the money line. For you non-bettors, Coyotes plus 106. If you bet 100, you'd win 106. If you want to bet the Sabres at minus 128, you have to bet 128 to win 100. The over-under, 6.5, minus 106 on the over, minus 114 on the under. Time for my parlay. I'm going to start by going over 6.5 goals in this game. And my biggest reason, Karel Vejmelka is the starting goaltender. He is their number one on paper. This year, though, he has not been. Connor Ingram has outplayed him by a lot. Connor Ingram, a .920 save percentage compared to Vejmelka's an .892. Vejmelka also near the bottom of the league, 53rd in the NHL in goals over expected. Actually, excuse me, not 53rd, 62nd out of 68 for Vejmelka. I think the Sabres will get some goals on him, so I'm going over 6.5 for the two teams in this one. I am going to go with the Sabres minus 1.5 on the puck line. I think they've been playing really well. Their last 2 games have been great. I thought they outplayed Montreal significantly, and I thought they outplayed Boston. They didn't just beat Boston, they outplayed them too. So I got the Sabres minus 1.5, and then I'm going to go JJ Peterka to record 3 or more shots on goal. I bet that on Saturday. Peterka just fires it at the net all the time, and I can't imagine why he would stop doing it in this one. So Peterka plus over 3 shots on goal, 3 or more shots on goal. So that brings you for a combined parlay of 3 legs for plus 749. 10 to win 74, 100 to win 750 or 749 if you're interested. And that's going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Hopefully we're talking to you next after a Sabres win, and they got to start putting some wins together. Can we get a win streak for once in our lives? Let's hope so. Thanks for listening here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Reminder, Locked On Sports has the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today, here for your 24/7, covering the top stories from around the league, all leagues. Local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel.